Welcome to Freedom Cast, where your hosts, Jordan and Miranda, show you how to get just a little bit more out of life. Are you ready to leave normal behind?
So today we are talking about criticism. We are talking about how do you handle criticism?
The Freedom Cast, leaving normal behind way.
Yes. How do you handle criticism in a way that you can turn it into something positive instead of letting it leach down into your soul and make you upset?
Yeah, because criticism is one of those things that really can get to you. And there are going to be some points where there's really nothing you can do about it. Maybe you release a new book like I did and someone gives you a 2-star review with a really lengthy review about how your book is bad. Now, we mentioned this before. We talked about this guy because Miranda called him a troll. I just called him a guy that left me an unfavorable review, but then I still had to go and deal with that criticism, especially when it's things like that, when it's something you've been working really hard towards. Maybe you've been working 2 years on your hobby. Maybe you're doing some pottery or you're taking dance lessons. 2 years into it, and someone says, man, like, you should really take some dance lessons. Or have you ever tried, like, working on your pottery and then you're just crushed because you know you've spent that amount of time and it's just been, like, that is not the reaction I was hoping for.
It's the worst feeling when you get that kind of criticism, and it feels like a physical blow sometimes if it's, something that you're really passionate about, or you feel like you've really improved, and then someone says like something, just a side remark, and it feels like it just shoots you back.
Yeah, and it may not be intentional.
Yeah, no, it doesn't even have to be an intentional remark. Criticism sometimes comes, and that's when you don't expect it, and that's when it can even hurt more when you're not expecting it.
Yep.
So, for example, I had a mid-year review / evaluation thing at my job last week.
And of course, they didn't tell you about it, right?
No.
You just showed up, of course. Hey, we're doing your mid-year review.
I didn't even know we had mid-year reviews. So
I think they just decided that day, probably.
Yeah, I think they did. So it was just kind of a last-minute thing. And it's very frustrating because you only there's 3 boxes for everything. It's either you go, above expected, or below expected. So really,
we had that for Hawthorne too, the exceed expectations that we were told that you never get.
Yeah, and that's, so because you get that speech every time. It's like, well, you expected, that just means like you're doing your job, you're doing what you're supposed to do. But if you want to get exceeds expected, you have to be, like basically killing yourself here. You have to be, here at all hours and working late and giving up your time, and they basically make it so that it's unattainable to get that exceeds at all. And I always get that speech, and that speech is just, it's so frustrating.
That speech is the worst because that's where it can be even harder to deal with criticism. And that's why we're mentioning that, because a lot of people that are listening to this show may have to go through those type of reviews. I think pretty much everyone has some kind of yearly review, especially if you are in a normal salary job or a normal hourly job. Freelancer, I don't necessarily have that, but there may be like meetups with people every once in a while. Like, you're still going to have to go through something like that regardless of what you do. You're going to have to at some point
get criticism.
Yeah, get criticism. You're going to have to show your work at some point and show how you're doing. And there's going to be varying levels of people. Some people are going to give you good feedback, give you feedback that's going to help you improve your job, or they're just going to randomly decide to do a mid-year review and not really say anything that helpful. It's just, you're going to have run the gambit with that.
Yeah. And I do want to say, too, for freelancers, you're kind of getting your criticism directly from your clients and directly from your customers, which is kind of even scarier.
It's scarier. It's an interesting world. And that's why a lot of people, I think, say, like, well, I wouldn't want to do that, because I can't hide behind a company in any way. If I don't bring results for people, then it's on me. And that could negatively affect me. I could get, like I said before, I could get that 2-star review on a book. or I could get a negative review on one of my freelancing profiles. Yeah, and that could affect me. And that to me, that's incentive to work harder for the person and to really only take the right kind of jobs. But yeah, it is a little bit scarier in that position. But yeah, everyone faces it.
Yeah, I think in traditional jobs, the problem with criticism is, like I said, I just got, average. Like I was basically told, you're completely average. Okay.
Thank you for showing up.
Thank you for, being here for a year. Like, you're okay. It just feels like a cop out.
But yeah, well, maybe we'll take that note for a second. If you're someone listening to this and you have employees, take a moment and just show them that you appreciate them. If you're doing a mid-year or a yearly review, give them some constructive feedback that might be hard to hear. But it's better to hear feedback that's hard to hear than it is just to hear, well, you're mediocre, you're doing okay, thank you. Like, that is not necessarily good, and people are going to take that as not necessarily negative, but they're not going to see it as a very helpful meeting. It's just going to be a waste of your time and a waste of their time. So if you're going to have those kind of reviews, give people feedback that's going to help them improve their job performance or exceed with the company. Show them what you really want them to become. I just want to put that note in there because, if we could be doing more of that in our world, I think we could be doing a lot better. We could have better jobs. We could, have better everything if we could just have those type of conversations.
Yeah, and for me, the company I work at, we have over 1,000 employees. So you already feel small and insignificant. And if you need to be, as a manager in those positions, you need to figure out what is the strength of that specific employee. What do I value about Miranda? Not what, she's average.
I value so much
okay.
about you, my wonderful wife.
So
not me?
So that's, just, connecting to what you're saying. You have to kind of value that individual even more if it is a large company, a company where, what they do isn't, seen as much or appreciated on a day-to-day basis. So that kind of inspired this podcast. But we just want to talk about not just getting criticism, because that's not the fun part. And
we don't really have control over that. Like that, and that's kind of what we're saying. You don't necessarily have control over when you're going to get feedback.
Yeah, you can only control how you take it, how you take the hit, and then how you respond to that, which is like most things in life. It's, some things you can't control, but how are you going to respond to that in a positive way?
Yep. And I wanted to say one thing. We've talked a lot about, Miranda and I's struggles on this podcast, but one thing I've been pretty good in my life is being able to take criticism, always being coachable. I even won the Coaches Award back when I was in baseball, back in even before middle school.
Wow.
Yeah. I like that because it shows something about one of my core values is being able to take criticism and then growing from that, because I know that it's something that, unfortunately I've gotten a lot of in my life. I've never been super great at anything right away. So I've had to be like, okay, how can I work this? How can I figure it out so that I can do better at this? And I think it's actually turned into one of my greatest strengths. So that's why I was especially excited to share on this podcast, just to share a little bit about that, because it's not easy to take that criticism, but man, can you make a big difference if you're willing to just say, okay, that might have stung a little bit, but then where was the truth in that? And they do say there's a nugget of truth in every kind of criticism. I don't necessarily believe that, because if you're getting criticism from someone who doesn't know you at all, there may be no truth in that at all. They may have just had to say it, or they may have been being a troll or whatnot. But, I just want to say that.
No, I wanted to jump in there and rewind because you took off with the train there. But for me, this is something I have struggled with a lot. I have never been naturally gifted in handling criticism. I cry most of the time. That's my go-to.
Which there's nothing wrong with that, because I've cried when I've received criticism too. I want people out there to know, if you're, just because you're a man, just because of whatever, it's okay to break down. It's okay for it to hurt you. I just wanted to add that in there because I think that's important too. We have feelings, and then we have to be willing to just be to accept that.
Yeah, but for me, it's always been... Let's talk about me for a second.
All about you.
It's all about me. No, so for criticism...
Talk about me. I'm over here.
something that I do tend to take, and then I like keep it and hold on to it and let it fester. And that's the thing you really don't want to do with criticism, because that just makes it way worse and it multiplies. I'm also a very sore loser in games. Monopoly and Risk you got to be careful. I have to be.
What does it have to do with criticism?
It has nothing to do with criticism.
Oh, okay. I really was curious. I was curious about the bridge.
It's kind of...
Because we are talking about you.
We're talking about me. It doesn't matter. We're just talking about me. But it is somewhat related. In my mind, it's a similar feeling, handling criticism and, losing at a game. It's a similar feeling. It's
that feeling of maybe I'm not good enough. That's what that's the related feeling. And I think that's just a sham. I don't think anyone should ever feel that. I know, and you do, and I have. But it's nothing we ever need to feel, because we each have our own unique talents and abilities. And if anyone out there is putting you down so much that you don't believe that, or you don't think what I'm saying is true, then that person's wrong. You definitely have valuable skills and assets that you can bring to wherever you're at.
Okay, so Mr. Coachable, since you're the expert, I'm the novice. Is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not saying I'm great. I'm just saying, like, this has been something I've been blessed with in my life, just to be able to grow and learn from different things. I really do think that's one of my greatest strengths now, and I'm happy for it, even though it hasn't been necessarily easy. It's never easy to be like, well, Jordan, you're actually terrible at this, and for me to be like, okay, well, show me how to get better.
Yeah, but what advice would you give? What is the best way to take criticism, something that can come at you very negatively, and how do you turn that into something positive that you can utilize to become a better person?
Well, that's a great question, interviewer Miranda. Are you sure you were done talking about you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I needed a moment. That's all.
You had your moment. I think the number one way to deal with criticism is to incorporate and create your own personal filter. I think that is the number one thing. And I had to learn that early on, and I'm still learning that as I go. But just because of the fact that there are people out there that are going to give you feedback that's not necessarily true. And then there's well-meaning people out there that are going to give you feedback that is true and that you can benefit from. And I think that filter is the thing that you need. You need to have that in place. So you might ask, that makes sense, Jordan. I need a filter to figure out which is true. How do I get that? Now, again, that's not necessarily easy either, to go ahead and figure out how to make that filter, but really it just comes with experience, and it comes with analyzing the situation. Lots of times, it's gonna hit your heart, especially if it's really negative, or really like, hey, Jordan, you suck at this, or Miranda, you are really bad at games in general. Like, you stink at games. Like, you're never gonna win. And those type of things are like, man, like, that hurts, and it's gonna hurt you. But I think, you can't let it stay there. You can't let it stay at a place of hurting you. You need to take time and analyze it and really think about it. See, is this true? Is this feedback true? Try to take a step back. You can communicate with friends. That's one thing I made sure to do that. I would talk with my parents, or I would talk with my friends and be like, hey, is this, especially if it was something about my character, if it was feedback about my baseball swing, I may not have needed to talk to my dad about that. Because it may not have bothered me. I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. But if it's something to your core, if it's something that's really like, wow, like, I hope that's not true, talk to people, talk to people that really know you, and bounce it off of them and see if it's something that is true. And then if it is, you have to reconcile with that, and you have to make a decision. Either you're going to ignore that, or you're going to, change things, and you're going to change the way you do things, or you're going to stop being such a jerk or something. You're going to stop doing things a certain way. I think it's just being as humble as you can in those situations. Yeah. I think I said a lot of different things there. There wasn't necessarily like one easy to manage piece of advice, but I think personal filter. Does that make sense, Miranda? Any questions on that?
Yeah, it comes down to, when you get that criticism, you do have to make that decision of, is this coming from a credible source? Is this a troll on the internet who, has no like bearing or say on like my content or what this is? Or is this, my boss who cares about me and legitimately wants to see me succeed? So you have to first take that step and say, okay, this is someone that I am able to trust. I have to look past this initial hurt and then find the part that you can improve on and, find what it is that is at the core of that criticism and see what you can do to make that better. But you have to have that filter, because otherwise you're going to be, it kind of turns into people pleasing almost, I guess. But you have to, see, is this something that I really, want to change as well? If someone's telling you that, you're too nice to people, you have to be more of a jerk, and your values do not line up with that, obviously don't try to change that about yourself. It really is a lot of discernment, and you have to look at it in a way that you're not filling it with emotion, which is the hardest part. You have to take the emotion out of it and then see, is this something I want to change? Is this something, that I really want to change? So I think it is good sometimes to let the dust settle, before you start trying to discern whether it's something you really want to work on. But
that stage is where it can get the hairiest, because if it's something that is really hurting you, because you do need to take it in to then, because you can't just have a personal block. That's why I call it a filter, because it's not just a block. I'm not going to listen to what anyone says ever. I'm doing it all the right way. Like, that's not right either, because we definitely do a lot of things wrong, most of us. And it's good to just have a conversation with other people and to be willing to take that feedback in. The filter comes through in, am I going to let this bother me? Am I going to let this bother me? And am I going to do something about it? If you get feedback from someone that really hurts you, but you talk to the people around you, you really analyze it, you really think about it and pray about it, and it's something that comes back and you're like, well, no, what they said is just not true, then you have to make a choice to get over that. And you can get over that with that thinking. It's not just, well, get over that. It's not what that's about. It's realizing that there's no truth in it and then moving on from there.
Yeah, and another thing that I just thought of about how to handle it is you have to, I like to call it zoom out on your life.
Zoom out?
You have to zoom out. You have to take a second, because in life, it's so easy to get caught up in the details, so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, that something that seems huge to you in that moment, like a huge criticism of, you're really bad at acting, and that hurts you so bad, but then it's because you're so zoomed in on it. You have to take a second, zoom out, and look at your life as a whole and say, I have my faith and my family, and I have all these other, amazing blessings in my life. Being made fun of because of my acting in a school play, that's not the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah.
So you have to just, zoom it out and then look at the perspective from a bird's eye view instead of that hyper-focused, zoomed in all the way on this one facet of your life. It's not, most likely it's not do or die.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw a quick example in here just to kind of show what we're talking about. Recently, I think it was for a book. What was the meh review? Was it for a book?
I think that was a book, yeah.
It was for a book. I got a 2-star review on a book, and all of the reviewer said in the review was meh, and left a 2-star review. Now, did that bother me? Of course it did, because I spend so much time writing my books and marketing my books that even one 2-star review can just not really help. And it's just not good for my book sales page, and it could harm my sales and make my time spent doing that book not as worth it. So it bothered me for that reason. But did I let that review really stick with me and bother me? No, because it was from someone that, for whatever reason, didn't like what I wrote, gave it a 2-star review, but didn't give me any constructive feedback. They just went meh. So it's not something that's going to stick with me. Now, I'll tell a different story. That same guy that we talked about that left me that 2-star review for my book launch Gladiator book, he was the very first review I got for that book. Since then, I've received 51 or 52 reviews on Amazon that have all been positive. And the emails I got from people and pretty much everyone else said, "Hey Jordan, I actually really liked this book," and they gave me some concrete reasons why. Now those same people gave me some constructive feedback about the book, but it was nothing crazy. It was people that said, "Hey, did you think about this?" Or this section didn't seem like it was edited, like you missed a couple things. Like, that's fine, that's great. I was happy to receive that. But that did bother me because it was the first review for a book that I had spent, a good chunk of time getting together and getting out there, getting some reviews going, getting some people to read it, and do all that work. And then the first thing that comes back is that. And that's where it's like, oh, that got me that day. I was down that day. I'll admit it. It didn't keep me down for long. Their positive reviews started flowing in after that. But yeah, my guard wasn't up. So, even someone that can take constructive feedback relatively well, even if you get really good at that, you're still going to have those times where your guard may not be up. All of a sudden, someone sends you an email, and gives you some feedback, tells you something that hurts. And you're gonna have to learn how to deal with that. And it's not easy, and I don't like it. Nobody likes it. But it's just learning to, get your support system and being able to move on from there. So those are two very different examples of negative, criticism. But there's just different ways you have to deal with them. And that guy did spend a lot of time. He wrote a pretty lengthy review on why he didn't like the book. I didn't agree with a lot of what he said, but he had his reasons, and he gave them. He reasoned them and wrote about them. And to me, that's a lot better in some ways than that just meh review. It's better because of the feedback, but it also hurts more because he took more time to do that.
It's better and it's worse.
It's better and it's worse.
In different ways. And that's another thing to remember. I'm a natural people pleaser. So for me, sometimes it's hard to just accept that, not everybody's just gonna like what I do. Not everybody's gonna think I'm funny, or, you want, as a people pleaser, you want to just, make people happy and do what the person expects. And it is something you have to realize with criticism, not everyone's gonna love your book. That was just unfortunate that I was the first person to review it didn't like your book.
I know.
But
no, so then my thoughts were well, maybe there is some merit to what he's saying because I haven't gotten any feedback, and that's
freaking out, and then that's where that's the hairy part, like you said. So it is something to keep in mind that you just have to accept as part of life. That's just how things go. Not everyone's going to automatically love you or your personality, and that's something I've definitely been growing in a lot.
I think you deserve a shout out with that, because when I was first dating you, and you already said this too, you were a really bad sore loser, but to the point where if I made a move against her in a game, she would lose it and leave the room freaking out, and I'd be like, what just happened? Because Miranda is a very, very much a very calm,
go with the flow,
very genuine, very nice person. But when it comes to board games and stuff, it's a different person comes out. And I wanted to give you a shout out because especially I would say over the last few years, you have completely turned that around. And of course you can still be competitive, and I've always felt like I've been competitive, but you can be a good winner too. Those things can line up. You can be the most competitive person in the world and still be a kind person, and still be a friendly loser, or a good loser.
A good loser.
Is that what it's called? Good loser? I don't know.
A non-sore loser.
But yeah, you'll be, I'll do a move against you in the game, and you make a look at you look at me still. You look at me like I'm going to kill you. But you don't leave the room, and you visibly calm down within a few minutes, and everything is good.
No tears involved anymore. I remember we were playing 4-person chess. Chess is terrible enough already. Why make it 4 people?
4-person chess doesn't even make sense. The rules don't work. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
But I remember there were tears. There were tears with that one. But yeah, I've definitely...
I forgot about 4-person chess.
But it did. The other day we were playing Settlers of Catan and Catan.
Any Settlers
the connoisseurs.
Catan people out there, what a great game.
It really is. But Jordan had to end up trading me. He gave, like, I gave him goodwill and he gave me some cards because...
Yeah, I had to trade in goodwill.
Yes, you traded in the goodwill currency.
Which is still, you were manipulating to win, but...
Yeah. Well,
that's besides the point.
We don't want to tell the world my game strategy.
I make sure to tell everyone your strategy. Whenever I play games with other people and you, I don't even care. I just tell people. I'm like, Miranda's probably going to win and she's going to sneak her way and you need to stop her.
You just have to...
Which works for me because then they pay attention to you and then I win.
Yeah, you just don't want to pull ahead too early. You want to seem like, just be like right there.
This isn't game strategy episode. This is feedback episode.
Well, it's like in The Office where Dwight's like, it's never the person you least expect. And it's never the person you most expect. Well, how does he say it? He says it's
always the person you most middle expect.
Yes.
Or something that doesn't make sense.
It's great game strategy. So if you take nothing else away from this podcast episode.
Game strategy.
Game strategy.
You are pretty good at games.
I'm pretty good.
I haven't beaten you lately, but...
Nah.
Okay, back to criticism. Do you have any other examples we'd like to share?
Well, I just wanted to talk more about my work example.
Okay.
So yeah, this was last Thursday I got this review, and I actually got not average, but like he like checked it off like slightly below the average box. Like it wasn't like the below average box, but it wasn't the average box.
What? He did like slightly below the average box?
But he did that one for
That's
I think it was like initiative, and he said, well, we just don't really hear much from you. And I was like, you
don't ask.
Yeah, I mean, that's, chicken
I will defend
egg.
your honor. Where's my sword?
Yes. But for me, I mean, I'm not putting my whole heart and soul in this job, which, so I can't really be upset about getting average marks because I'm not like, it's kind of a funny example, but.
It is funny because, you're not really aiming for anything more than average here.
Yeah, because I'm not, using a lot of initiative because I'm not really like trying to climb any ladders there. I'm just showing up. But I've had perfect attendance since I started last August. And that's something I've always taken a lot of pride in, even in high school and in college. Like I never skipped class. I very rarely get sick, so I only would miss school if I was really sick, but that really, high school, college, that never really happened. I don't get I have a very good immune system. So, so I've always been very dependable, and I've always been very punctual when it comes to school and work. And so,
to a degree where it's a little bit crazy, where sometimes you wake up way earlier than you would actually have to, just to make sure you get somewhere on time.
Yeah, and
but only for work and school.
I set an alarming amount of alarms.
It's an alarming amount of alarms.
It's an alarming amount of alarms because I'm paranoid.
Yeah.
Like, well, what if my phone dies? Then I need like the physical alarm clock. Well, what if my first alarm doesn't make a sound? I don't know if anyone else out there is like me. Please contact me. But
I think it might just be you, babe.
It's just me,
you.
all alone.
All alone in the cosmos.
Yeah, but that was not even something that was brought up in the meeting. Like, I'm feeling like, you know what, attendance, no one else, I can't think of anyone else that has had perfect attendance for almost a year.
Was there a mark on that? Because you should have exceeded that.
No, because that's doing my job. I just did my job.
Yep.
Your job is to show up every day. So, yeah, so that wasn't even mentioned. So I just called off on Friday for no reason. And
well, you weren't feeling good.
Yeah, well, I wasn't feeling well, but it was definitely a great day. It was awesome.
It was a great day of not feeling well. I took care of you.
Yeah. But that was not a very good example. So just, listen to Jordan's example, and yeah, I don't know how I helped at all with criticism there.
Yeah, I don't know. You were just saying about receiving it. So how did you feel? Let's get back to that example, because how did you feel with that? And there's a part of you that was like, man, like, I hope they say that. I hope they say that. And I think a lot of people that go into these yearly reviews are having expectations as to what feedback they're going to get. And I think that's normal. So how did you react? Like, what did you do personally just to react to that? To be okay with that?
To be okay with it? Well, I think I do. I know that, part of it is, there is truth to it. I accept that. I'm not pushing myself to my like absolute limits at this job. And
I think that's good because you're looking at it in a real way and accepting the truth there.
Yeah, it's still irritating to get a review that basically says nothing. It does seem like a waste of time, but it is, it's important to think about that if you're trying to get, if you're fishing for compliments and fishing for your employer to notice you, you have to use kind of their, not love language, but their work language, if you will. Because, for example, my boss obviously thinks initiative is important. And he also has like a weird pet peeve with, I work at a greenhouse and sometimes they put down tables of plants and squish them together so you can't walk through. And that's just a big pet peeve of his. I bet if I spent, the past year, instead of having, perfect attendance, if I made sure my like lanes were always free, like he probably would have noticed that and said something. So it's just important to remember. You're looking at me like I'm totally crazy.
No, I was going to say we could do a whole podcast episode on that about meeting the priorities of the people above you if you want to like really impress the people that are going to give you a review. And it's like anything in life. You really find out what's valuable to those people. I think you hit it like you hit on a whole nother episode. That's why I was looking at you. Like that. Yeah. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's just
because that's how you get ahead. That's how you like.
Yeah, like if they don't care about.
It's not about the job. It's about pleasing the person. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies,
everything's about relationships. Yeah, and if you
about
you know what bothers that person, fix what bothers that person, and they're definitely going to notice. If you're solving a problem they don't care about, you're going to feel like you deserve recognition, but they're not going to feel that way because they didn't even notice. Yep. So that's just another helpful life trick.
And I think a great thing to do too is in those situations as you're getting the feedback is ask clarifying questions as much as you can. Now, if Miranda was in a position where she was really like devastated and really like, man, like I thought I was the best employee here. I really thought I exceeded expectations. I always show up. I always stay late. I always I work through my break, blah, blah, blah. And then they're saying, well, you're average, well then how can I be more than average? Like what is your expectation? What can I do? And then especially if you have that same manager, that's something that you can work on that relationship and say, hey, I've been working on this and I actually did I did exactly what you said. Is it true? Is it true that I did exactly, what you said this past time? And I'm still looking at this exceed range or this average range without a raise. Like that's just another value I think of, I don't necessarily agree that it's great to stay with a company for a while, but as far as feedback goes, that's a value you get out of that. And I think if you're going to be somewhere for a while, it's going to go a long way with your own happiness just to ask for feedback and say, hey, how can I do this better? That's going to help you on those yearly reviews. And again, that's one thing I've always done too, along with just my ability to take that feedback and not just be totally devastated. Now, like I said before, it's hurt me at times. But I've requested feedback too and not just waited for it and said, hey, how can I be doing my job better? And I know those things are hard to say. Like it's so difficult to put yourself in that situation because you're like, I really don't want to hear this right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with this. But the more you do it, it's one of those things like the more you're rejected, the easier it is to be rejected. Like the more you do whatever, the more resilient you're going to be, for whatever. The more you travel, the easier it's going to be. All that stuff. It's like immunization therapy. The more you're getting yourself out there, better you are going to be able to deal with it. And that's what it is with feedback too. And that's why I've always been that way. I've always just been like, hey, how can I do better? I do that in our marriage too, to a point where it probably drives Miranda crazy sometimes. I did that more early on as we were getting to know each other. But hey, how can I do better in this relationship? How can I be a better husband? And I think those questions, like, it's not like, again, it's not easy to ask those questions. Like it can feel super uncomfortable because you have to be intentional, but that is really what I think that's one of the secrets to life is being intentional, not waiting, not being a person of passivity, taking action. We talked about our mission statement.
Be proactive.
Yeah, be proactive and not waiting and being reactive to situations, but asking and thinking about things ahead of time. I think is just so important.
Yeah. So, let's just, wrap this up tight with a bow. as we're nearing our time mark here. So when you get criticism, make sure you're using your personal filter. And if you don't have one, try to get one and try to learn how to use that filter. Don't let it fester. Try to use whatever, if there is criticism that has that's coming from a reliable source, try to use that and turn it into something positive. Also be proactive with asking people before they criticize you how you can be doing better. Ask before someone just tells you, and then you'll be more prepared for it. And yeah, that was all the points, right?
Yeah, that's how you take criticism.
Yeah, the rest
and that's what you do with it.
Was all just random. So
those are random stories in between. They were great stories.
Yes. So thank you so much for listening. We're so glad that you guys have tuned in. Hopefully now you feel a little more prepared for handling criticism. If you want to contact us, just email Jordan, leave a comment. We are always here, and we would love to hear from you.
Yep, we'd love to connect with you guys. Stay toasty, friends.
Bye-bye.